decided today that I'm going to harvest most of my chilies. So these are my spoils. So I've got cayenne, chili peppers. I've got one yellow bell pepper, some long purple aubergines, the cayenne chili peppers, Apache, which I think are really pretty. Then jalapeno, and finally Scotch bonnet. So I'm really happy with that. So now I've harvested all of my chilies, I need to process them. So you've already seen that I've got some of the cayenne chili peppers strung up and hanging in the greenhouse to dry. They've been there for a few weeks and they are drying out slowly. So I've done something very similar with the Apache. These are just going to hang here and dry, and I can pick them off as I'm cooking. Okay, so these are the chilies. So these are the ones that I use in most of my cooking. These are the cayenne, and I'm going to freeze those. I may also freeze some of these. These are the jalapeno, so that's one option. These are my Scotch bonnet, and I think they'll make fantastic chili powder, so I'm going to dry those in the dehydrator. And then I've got a selection of cayenne peppers, obviously red and green. The red are hotter than the green, but I'm going to make some chili oil with those. And then finally, these are the chilies that I dried last year, and I'm going to grind those up into powder. So the first thing I'm going to do is tip these into here. So let's see what we've got. So that looks fantastic, look at that. So method number 2 is really straightforward. You don't have to blanch them. They're clean because they're in a greenhouse, so I don't need to wash them. And I'm just going to put them in the freezer bag to get as much air out of the bag as I possibly can. And then I like to lay them as flat as possible so they're not touching each other. And then I pop them in the freezer And then once they're frozen, I can shake the bag up and then they won't stick together. Okay, so the next recipe I'm going to do is to make a chilli oil. I'm using a recipe by Jamie Oliver, and you need 10 whole chilies, and you need to fit them snugly at the bottom of a pan, which is what I've done. And then it says to top with olive oil, so you need 2 centimetres of olive oil, which is literally covering them. So let me pour that in. And it says put them on a very low heat and slowly simmer them for an hour. So these have simmered in oil for an hour and they've cooled down. So all I'm doing now is I'm just removing the seeds and the stalks. It smells good, that's for sure. Right. So that's my oil. I'm just going to top the jar up now. So homemade chili oil and homemade chili powder. So I've shown you 3 methods of how I'm preserving my chili peppers, and I've got these left over. These are the Scotch bonnet and some of the cayenne that I've not used, and I'm going to prepare them and I'm going to put them in my dehydrator and I'm going to dry them out. So let me show you what I need to do. I've got my selection of chilies. I've got a sharp knife and a chopping board. I've also got some latex gloves because chilies are an irritant and they will irritate the skin, and if you rub your eyes you'll know it. So as a protective barrier I'm going to be wearing these gloves. I've got a glass jar with a seal in it, which when the whole job is completed I will store the chilies in there. And then I've got the dehydrator. Now for the dehydrator, they've got, I think I've got another 3 trays, but I'm probably only going to use 1 or 2 today. These are the trays. I'm going to set it for 70 centigrade and it's going to take approximately 10 hours. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my gloves on, cut off the stalk, like that. She says, there we go. So cut off the stalk and then I'm going to cut them in half, and I shall get my tray. Oh, smell it already. I'm going to leave the seeds in and I'm going to sit them on the tray, space them out. And I will come back to you when I'm done. Okay, so they're all prepared. Oh, they smell wonderful. So as you can see, they're all nice and dry. So now they're ready for storing. So these will store for at least 3 years, if not longer, as long as they're kept in an airtight container. Now this jar obviously is rather large for the quantity that's in there, but I've also got all my cayenne that are hanging up and the Apache, so once they're all dry they can go in there as well. So in the meantime I'm going to keep them in this much smaller jar because I want to keep them as airtight as possible so that they don't oxidise. That was a mistake that I made last year. I hadn't realised, and obviously keep taking chilies out of the jar as well was adding more air. And they start to turn brown, so I really want them to keep their colour for as long as possible. So once I've got enough to fill the larger jar, then I'll transfer them, but for the time being they're going to stay there. So there are lots of uses for dried chilies. You can grind them down, as I've mentioned before, but if you grind them coarsely you'll make chili flakes, and if you grind them really finely you'll have chili powder. You can add them dried to stocks and stews, or perhaps chili con carne, that works just as well. Or if you want to rehydrate them first, you can soak them in hot water for about 10 minutes.